Hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Rugby League Roundtable. I'm James Graham, your host, joined by the administrator, Tony Mestrov, the coach, Shane Flanagan, the player, Aaron Woods, and the media representative, Brent Reid. Today we are talking all things the media. So Brent, I'm going to come to you. Does the media have too much power?
Not enough power, Jimmy, not enough power. No, I mean, the media has an influence on the way the game's portrayed and, the way the game's critiqued, I guess. But Peter V'landys and Andrew, pretty smart, powerful men, and I'm sure they take in what they think's worth taking in and they ignore the other stuff. I don't know if the media has too much power. I think that's a misconception.
Well,
I wish it was true, Jimmy. I wish it was true.
We know it can play a role in deciding people's jobs.
Yeah.
Is the media's role not to just report the truth?
No. You're talking two different issues there. Why are you saying, how are they interrelated? I don't get how you're interrelating those two ideas. You're saying that we play a part in deciding people's futures, but you're saying that we have to report the truth.
No, I'm saying should you just report the truth? So when it comes to a job being made available, say for a coach, for example, is the role of the media not to just report the truth? Like, who is the best candidate in your opinion?
Well, but that's my truth. You would disagree with me. So my version of the truth will be different to your version of the truth. You might think Flano's the best bloke for the job. I might think Siebes is. So who's telling the truth there? It's just an opinion, right?
Yeah, well,
so sometimes we have opinions, Journalists have opinions and we write about them. That's what we're paid to do sometimes. But coaches' futures are ultimately dictated by results, not by the media. The only time a coach comes under pressure for his job is if he's not winning. So wins or losses dictate a coach's future, not the media. In the end, report that the bloke's under pressure, or a bloke might have 8, 10 weeks, whatever, to keep his job, but that's coming from someone. And the reason we report on it is because they are under pressure because they're not winning. Look at Kevy Walters, prime example. Right, Kevy was under pressure because he didn't win.
Is there a certain level of compromise, though, due to your relationships with either certain clubs or certain people within clubs, or maybe even a player agent or a coach agent?
Well, relationships
that is looking to push a certain agenda as opposed to deliver the truth.
Well, again, that you're saying that an agenda is pushing a false truth, but it may not necessarily be incorrect. Well, they might be telling you, people get fed information all the time, right? You've always got to check it. As a journo, you should always check it. And I've always said...
What about times when you check it and you know it's not right, but you still write it?
Who does that?
I'm just saying.
I don't know any journo who does that.
Are you influenced by that person that you've got the relationship with to try to get that stuff out there for him?
Yeah, but not to the point of reporting something that's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, well, some blokes might. My view is I always check things with you need at least 2 sources.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you don't run it, right? Because you're right. Sometimes people feed you stuff that mightn't be correct because they've got an agenda, right? Your responsibility is to check that with someone else. You shouldn't run that without checking it.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for other journalists and what they do. Some other journos might be happy to take someone's version of events. But my view, you're smiling. But my view is you should always check things, no matter. I'm this.
No, I was just asking
to
a question.
To a degree, right? To a degree. So, just say someone tells you, which often happens these days, particularly around this time of year. Josh Addo-Carr's met with the Dragons, for example. Right? If you got it from someone who was, if Flano told me that, I'd believe it, right? He's the coach of the Dragons. I believe that. So I wouldn't necessarily go and check that with a second person. But when you're talking about things that are decidedly, I would say more, the source isn't as first-hand as that, or it's something that is maybe a bit more damaging, or you can't necessarily rely on it because it might be pushing an agenda, right? Or they might be giving it to you for a purpose. Then I think you've got a responsibility to go and check that with someone else. And there have been times, look, I've done this 20 years and more than 20 years. And there's been occasions where I may not necessarily, as recently as 3 years ago, I remember I got told something, I didn't check it, I wrote it, and I buried it in a story, and it's ruined my relationship with someone because I didn't check it. So that was a lesson for me. Occasionally you've got to learn lessons, right? Even if you've been doing something 20 years. Flano, Tony, you guys are, Woodsy, you played 20 years and I'm sure you were still learning stuff in your 20th year. So as journos, occasionally you need a reminder that you need to check stuff. Right.
Really, the thing about it, I mean, whether this conversation, you're good at that where you balance the story out, right? And I'm sure Flano and I got big enough chins to cop it, right? And all he wants is balance. And when the balance is not right, that's when you get upset. And I think there's 30 journos out there and it's pretty competitive. We all benefit from the revenue and the broadcast deals. So we all say, you know what? We try and work with the media, and we particularly do. So I think when the story is not balanced and it's not truthful, as Woodsy says, that's when you get upset. At Manly, we've made it our while to get on well with the media, stop the leaks because it was killing our club, and you do need to control it in some sense. Otherwise, it controls your club. We've seen many clubs this year with even the sacking of coaches where the media gets out of control and the message gets out of control. So all we ask for is balanced stories, not made-up stories, and that's where we do get upset.
Yeah.
Well, is it right? Is it right that you have sources within clubs? Like, is that for the consequences of that is stories leak? It aids you as a journalist, but it very much to the detriment of a football club.
Well, it's not always overly to the detriment of them, Jimmy. Sometimes it is, yeah. But that's our job, right? To uncover things and inform the public and find out things that sometimes clubs don't want that information out there. But that's our job.
So how do you go about...
Our job is not more... I'm not employed by Manly or St George. I'm employed by News Corp. My loyalty is to News Corp. It's not to Manly or St George, even though I might have a
how do you go about acquiring a source? Is it a trade-off of information? Is it a trade-off of I will help you, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours? Is it a financial incentive?
No, there's not money involved. No,
no, because there is this idea in rugby league circles, and it's something that I strongly believe, that there are certain media people that have funds that they give to certain individuals at certain clubs with a trade.
I've heard that, Jimmy.
An exchange of information.
I've heard that as well, but I've actually never stood that up or I've heard whispers that guys have got slush funds, right? That's
it's a good yarn for you.
But I don't know whether it's true, and I've never bothered checking. It's not my, if another journo wants to do that, that's not my. I'm not in the business of slagging off other journos. I don't think it reflects well on you, because generally someone might get a story and you go and bag them. Well, I mean, that's just.
But then would it not increase your popularity to have journo wars?
Sometimes it does. The punters actually love that.
Yeah,
stuff.
they do.
They love journos or media celebrities going at each other, but. I just don't think that way. I don't like that.
Okay, back to the question about having a source within a club or an organisation.
Well, it's just relationships, Jimmy. You guys really have relationships with players. You work with someone, talk to them. As I said, I've been doing it 20 odd years. There's some guys in this game I've known for 20 years, and it's just building up relationships with people, and they trust you.
But I'm sure there's a trade-off there where you maybe have been contacted by somebody within a football club who's gone, Reedy, I need to write something positive about my club, or I need you to write something positive about me.
No, I don't think I've ever had anyone ring me and go, I need you to write something positive about me. Maybe, maybe something, and I would say to them in that situation, well, give me something positive. I'm happy to write a positive yarn if there's something there. Because we always get bagged about writing negative yarns anyway, which is rubbish, because if you look at the paper, the vast majority of yarns are positive. It's just that people focus on the negative. And Jimmy, we're in a world now where every story we write it gets measured. We know how many people look at it, how many people read it, how many people click on it, and people bag us for writing negative yarns or controversial yarns. But the yarns that rate, the yarns that people want to read, the negative ones and controversial ones. The positive yarns, people don't read them.
Who comes up with the headlines of those yarns? Because a lot of times I see a headline and then I read the actual yarn. It's completely different to what the headline.
They always toss off on that. They always toss off on that one.
Yeah, that's one.
The editors write
So are the editors more worried just about the clickbait of them with the headline getting into that article?
Well, I think they want a headline that attracts the eye and what people probably want to read. I mean, we have the ability to read. If we're not happy with a headline, I can ring work and go, you need to change that headline.
Do you do that often?
Not often. Occasionally, we ring them and say, there was one this week, I can't remember what the story was. I didn't ring, Mick Carrianis did and said, we need to tone that headline down, because sometimes the headline, you're right, doesn't always give a genuine reflection of the story. And if that happens, we often ring work, well, not often, but occasionally we will ring work and say, can you tone that down?
Does that frustrate you that often the consumer of the content runs with the headline and not the actual story? Like, we've got shorter and shorter attention spans over.
Why don't you guys able to do the headline?
Well, not a headline, right? It's it's an art form, being able to write a really good headline.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. There's some great, they give awards every year for the best headlines. The Walkleys there's a Walkley Award for Headline of the Year. You nominate and there's a category for it. Like, writing headlines, it's a craft. It's not easy, Jimmy.
Surely AI can take over that now. Brent Reed's story goes in. Give us 5 potential headlines for this story.
You've got to put people out of work, Jimmy. Don't do that.
You've got to work with your stories sometimes.
When?
Coaches, Kevy Walters.
We didn't put Kevy out of a job. I just told you Kevy's results put Kevy out of a job. And the review that was done after that, we just reported on it. We didn't make that decision. I didn't make
You don't reckon that by you guys reporting on it doesn't put the knife in and twist it? Makes it harder, like
before or after?
both, during it.
Not really. We're just
situation.
reporting what's happened. That's our job. And sometimes people delve into the story on behind the scenes of what happened. People want to know. Like, that's how ultimately our loyalty is to the reader. It's not to Kevy, and I really like Kevy. I think he's a great bloke. But our loyalty is not to Kev; it's to the reader. And sometimes that goes against the
from a coach's perspective. Like, I know that certain journalists had contacts within the club, and you'd know that, Mezzy, as well. And just over a period of time where they're football managers and they've all of a sudden, had to deal with a football manager, CEOs. But you'd like to think, and I was at Manly when there was a few leaks going on.
Yeah.
Over different things, player injury. I remember one in particular, Tom tore his hammy, and before we got off the field, it was in the paper.
Yeah.
So like, we were looking at.
Is he good journalism?
Very good journalism. Yeah.
How do you think the player feels when that comes out? But
Well, he's torn his hammy. He probably feels bad.
But we had a meeting.
Anyway.
We had a meeting in the gym and pulled everyone and said, whoever leaks will be out of here. And we took it pretty seriously because I'd worked hard and the rest of the organisation around stopping leaks because, as you know, James, like leaks are a killer for players. And when you go, who told that? Everyone's asking. And it's just a club killer. I know you've got to do your job, really. Yeah. But as far as an organisation, it's just no good for it.
Yeah, and we'd like to control the story. Yeah. Like Tom's got to deal. I think Tom's family found out through the paper, when, or the radio, when they're the things that you'd like to try and control, that.
I'll give you an example yesterday, right? We knew Bradman Best was in the test team, and I spoke to someone in Newcastle, and they said, we haven't been able to tell Bradman yet. Can you wait a half hour so we can ring Bradman? And we said, no worries. We'll wait. We won't put it out there. So we put out the Carlin missed out, but we left out the story that Bradman was in the team.
Did Carlin know he missed out?
Carlin knew. They'd always spoken to him. So we do work with clubs. It's not always this butting of heads, It's sometimes we work with clubs when you can.
Yeah, I think you do, Reedy, and the better ones do, and the ones that don't.
And if we do a signing, for example, with you, Messi, we'll ring you and go, Tone, we've heard this, and you might say, well, can you just hold off? We're going to make an announcement at 1 o'clock. Can you wait till 1 o'clock or 12:50?
Well, they're tricky ones because as a club, and Messi will tell you, if you sign, we sign Aaron Woods, we deserve our members and our fans to know first. So we want that to go on our website where we're trying to keep it from you.
They read the newspaper.
No. We want them to be first. From a club's perspective. Now, things have changed. Things have changed. We would like to keep them as quiet as we can, our members first.
Correct.
They pay for that privilege.
We can't do
It's
that.
hard. It's so hard. I know you can't.
And I'm not going to bash the player managers again, but they're the ones that leak the information. And that's our problem. Like our members want to know, fans and so on, and yet the player manager leaks it to you guys, and then all of a sudden it's in the paper and you got to comment because you already know about it. So that seems to be where it's difficult for clubs where they do chat to you guys. So.
Really, good clubs manage their media well, but good clubs do. I find that I look at from outside looking in, I see this year, man, they've done a really good job. I see the Roosters do a really good job. Melbourne's a different situation because they're a little bit removed from a lot of the Sydney journalists, but I think good clubs manage the media well.
I reckon you look at it the wrong way, though, that we need to announce it to our fans first, right? My view is, if it's in the paper and then you announce it on your website, you double dip. You get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we do. But I just want to reverse it so our members get some sort of privilege of being a member of that club, forking out their money. They mightn't have apps and so on.
But they get the player. So we might go, we'll use Adokar again as an example. Just say you sign Adokar.
Really Adokar to the Dragons,
Just say it's at Josh Adokar, right? And we get the heads up, he's going to the Dragons, right? We put a story out, Josh Adokar's poised to sign a 3-year deal with the Dragons, right? You get the pips about that. But you know what? You get him on your website first talking. That's something for your fans.
Yeah.
So we can both win, Flano.
Oh, yeah, look, I'm just saying, there was just one part.
So were you sorry or?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. It's a tricky one, yeah, because as I said, we try and keep things just for, our members first. Most clubs have members first stuff, and sometimes you blokes are too good. You get it out there and it's out first. So, you need credit for that. I've got a little bit different perspective of, obviously, the 2 years out I had of coaching, working in the media, and understand it. I was a little bit sort of against media because I couldn't control it.
Yeah.
And, as that head coach, you wanted to control the media as much as you can, and you wanted good stories about your club. And it's just not always going to be like that. And, obviously, we get phone calls. Mezzy would get them, I'd get them about, what's happening at your club from different sources, and because you need content.
Yeah.
And we've got to understand that pays my wages a little bit as well, So if we give no content, we're not going to get paid.
I guess on an example of trying to sign a player and even like who gets to find out first, this might be, you're entering to go meet a player, but it's not just the fans and members, it's also the impact on your players and your playing group, especially if it's in a specialised position, that if it's leaked to the media, you're having to put fires out that you don't even maybe... Correct. Or if it doesn't come to fruition, you wouldn't have to have those conversations. And the psyche of the players, we all know athletes can be very delicate. So if you're a specialised hooker and your football club is linked in the media, or fullback linked to such a specialised position, you're trying to sign this player. It's like, hang on, now I've got more work to do. Now I've got an individual within my roster that's going, hang on, why are the club going behind my back?
I had that this year when we signed Damien Cook.
Yeah.
And, it was Cookie's a pro and he's a little bit older, and it was done pretty quickly. But I had Jacob Little, who played nearly every game and had a fantastic season in the PM13. I had to make sure that Jacob knew why we were signing Damien Cook, and he was comfortable with it. But it's exactly what, if I didn't have that opportunity, then I'm dealing with a player like, I've just had the best year that I have in NRL, and they've bought another hooker.
Yeah. And you might start you might have an inquiry with Cookie and his availability, right? And it just starts a conversation, but player manager leaks it to the media that Cook is in negotiations with the Dragons. Then the ramifications on your squad, or
we got an example at the moment with Gutho. And the Dragons being linked constantly with Gutho.
Or even, all the conversation in terms of retention and recruitment. You may have said, look, we're full on the cap.
Yeah, James.
And then well, hang on a minute. Why am I reading that you've gone and trying to negotiate with this player, and you've told me you've got no money on the cap.
I think sometimes we look about the player and, players moving and just the player, but there's so much more goes into it about their family, like their mum and dad.
Yeah.
Their brothers and sisters. They're the ones that affect more. Sometimes I feel that, mum and dad, how are they feeling, and they're ringing up, what's going on, Jacob? What's going on? Why are they signing another hooker or whatever it may be? And they're the ones that we forget about because they're so invested in their son's or daughter's career that we need to look at.
You got to get ahead of it, don't you, Flano? You got to be upfront because you do upset the group. But one thing we've done is just getting up, like saying the truth, like who we're speaking to. Otherwise, and it goes for the young guys too, because if a player is bought to go all the way through and you buy another player in a similar position, you're having that conversation. You've got to have that conversation because parents come out and they go, why did you buy that? I thought we were going to get that position. So if you don't get ahead of it, you start to get an unhappy club. They're going, what are you doing? Why aren't you being truthful? And the best thing you can do is upfront and truthful.
Really, which group of individuals in terms of administrators, coaches, players, player agents are you in contact with the most in terms of trying to
player agents?
I reckon I'm a bit different to most blokes. Like I probably speak to CEOs and club bosses more than most people because I was at the Australian for a long time and it was a different market. It was sort of existed in this market of it was very highbrow, the upper echelons of the game and stuff. So I built up a lot of CEO and relationships in that realm. Coaches a little bit, not as much as I used to. Probably speak to coaches. Players, not as much as I used to because I'm 54 now. I don't have a lot in common with the players. When I first started, I thought to myself, okay, there were a couple of young blokes coming through in the game who were going to be superstars, and I thought, right, I'm going to start dealing with these guys because build a relationship with them. And I remember they had drama, couldn't get them on the phone, and I thought, well, there's a lesson there because Alex Ferguson has a great quote about players. He said, never fall in love with players, they'll always two-time you. And I reckon, with players, I think, I'm not, no disrespect to the players out there, I love them. They're great fellas to deal with, but we don't go to I don't go to training a lot anymore because, you go to training, there's all these people there, they'll have a camera on. I'll leave training. By the time I leave training, it's on the internet anyway. It's a waste of time. And you don't get a lot of time to grab blokes one-on-one anymore. The clubs, you don't really get the access you used to. So I think that it's different. It's also so driven you in a different direction, I reckon, to deal with more with and agents who we all talk to agents. There's not a Geno who doesn't talk to agents.
Of course.
You've got them on speed dial, but
I reckon he has already.
For you as a coach, your dealings in terms of the players, but in a time of crisis management is a huge part of man management. Probably same with you, Tony. Less of the player. How important is it to lean into those relationships with your people that are going to write the stories, the journalists of the world?
Yeah, look, I got some good mates that are journalists. I get on well.
Flondo is one of the better ones. He's got good relationships with the media.
Yeah, I've known Dave Riccio for 20 years, and there's some people that and as I said, when I was out of the game for 2 years, I saw it from their eyes as well, so it was good for me. But you're 100% right. There's going to be times that there's going to be some stories that, aren't those warm and fuzzy ones about the club or about your football team. And
really says, they are the ones that tend to draw the eyeballs.
Yeah. I think from my perspective, I'm always trying to, protect the players and then protect the brand of our club because that's so important. I can, get over the stories about myself and, Mum and Dad have passed now, so I don't have to worry too much about them. I did. Yeah. They only passed away, 2 years ago. And I was, everything that was written about me, I was worried about Mum and Dad because I knew Mum and Dad would read it. And so I was really sort of protective of that. So that leads me into my players now that, they got parents, they got brothers and sisters and so on. So you're trying to protect those ones. But, it's really hard. If there is a crisis, that, obviously there's a crisis for a reason, how we deal with it, and that's where you lean on blokes like your CEO and your chairman and so on, that to manage those sort of points. And relationships. If you've got good relationships with media, I might be able to go to Reedy and say, hey, Reedy, it's not exactly what you're seeing here, and can you help me here a little bit as well? That's when you've got to try and push a bit of relationships.
Is that probably a part of coaching that I guess you have to learn the art of dealing with the public perception of you and your football club, and the art of, you can do X's and O's, and that's something that you can learn either being for a player, or you can do football courses now where you learn about actual genuine coaching. But part of being a head coach is dealing with times of crisis. Is that something that I guess when you first got into coaching you were underprepared for, or didn't realise the magnitude of that part of the role?
I learned quickly at the Sharks. I learned real quickly. Todd Carney, I had some blokes, Andrew Fafita, Josh Dugan, I went through Aaron Woods. I went through a period of time that, that the club was under a bit of a spotlight, and how to handle it. So it was tricky. Did I handle it well? No, I probably could have handled it better, but you learn from all those experiences. And, I really look back at those times, and, it's made me stronger, but also that, if something happens now, what would I do? And how would I go about it? I think I'd be better prepared that way.
I've got to say, Jimmy, it's actually not that hard to win over the media. I did some media training at the Roosters a few years ago, and I said to them, and the Bulldogs actually, and I said, it's very simple. Just say hello to people. Be respectful. If you see me or someone else at training, just say g'day. Because, our first thought is, he's a good bloke. I'm going to be reluctant to bag him if he has a bad game or does something stupid.
It's a good point, Reed. It's a good point.
Mate, it's not hard. Because, if it's as simple as saying hello, knowing something. There was one bloke, I won't name him, but a bloke at the end of his career, he knew every journo's name. He's got a job in the media now because he had great relationships with the media. He'd come up to your trainer, he'd go, hey, Brent, how are you, mate? Good to see you. Mate, well, what a good bloke. How good to see you. And now he's working in the media. It's actually not that hard. I wish players would pick it up earlier, because...
But one thing as well, Reedy, that I've noticed...
You've had great relationships.
I thought you were talking about me until you said it's a good bloke.
We all think you're a good bloke. You've pulled the wool over our eyes for years.
No, honestly, I think it's what clubs that certain players come from. I've been in Origin camps where, all those media, those days are huge. But you can tell the the players from different clubs they've come from. Like certain clubs... you can tell the ones that respect the media, the ones that give media time, then you got other ones where they want to control what's said to the media.
Yeah.
By the way that they handle themselves when you guys come around. Like I know when I'm around a group of boys or a group of blokes, teammates, if say Reedy comes over to say hello, there's some guys that go awkward and they might just walk away. Whereas, you can tell the ones that have got the good relationships, and that's why those clubs are never really under the pump that much.
Yeah.
And that just comes down to relationships with you guys.
Some blokes it takes time. Daly's a great example. Daly didn't have a great relationship with the media in the early days, but now, mate, we all love Daly now.
Yeah, he understands the value. I think as a club we do as well. So I was previously in Greyhound Race, New South Wales, and that was a political arena, and there was crises a lot of the time, and I came after the closure of the industry. I brought a team in from Greyhounds when I came to Manly, issues management, that helped me deal with crisis. So straight away, obviously, the decision was made to push on Des Hasler, and that went for a week, back page of the telly. It was loud, but sometimes you've got to deal with it, live with it. But there is a way to do it.
Yeah, because some clubs do seem to handle crisis better than others.
Because it can't be, you got to go to experts. I mean, as I said, I've dealt with the media a long time and I've got experience, but there's people that have that experience and know exactly what the media is going to say, what we need to say to hose it down in some respect. So you need that expertise in my eyes. Too many times I see clubs trying to do it themselves and not very successfully. So that's a bit of a key in my eyes.
It's interesting, like I guess the different tactics in each situation has its own nuances and needs to be handled differently. I don't think there's one cookie cutter approach, but the difference between maybe trying to sweep something under the carpet as opposed to getting on the front foot and just telling the truth and admitting the the mistakes can be.
You've got to. If you try and sweep under the carpet now, you're going to get caught. And I learned from Graham Annesley. He deals the press unbelievable. When I was at Gold Coast, he said they're going to find out. You might as well tell the truth, and he's 100% right. And journos will dig and dig and dig until the truth comes out. You might as well get on the front foot and come out with the truth because you're going to get found out.
Really, do you think, like you're the probably only one that can answer it, that clubs, the status of clubs, you approach them differently? Like if you're going to, and I'll use the Roosters as a classic example, you go across there,
Uncle Nick,
and you stuff up, you'll be getting a phone call from Nick.
Yeah, got a few of them. Nick's he's an amazing guy. You know Nick.
Yeah.
Like this guy's worth billions, and he'll watch 360 and ring you up afterwards. I always say to my wife, she'll go, "What's he ringing at this time for?" I go,
He's shaking.
I've got to answer this. You know, it's Nick Politis, right? So
is that in the back of your mind when you're sort of making a comment on that club while you're on the show? That if I say something negative, he's going to ring me?
No, but you know, Nick will give you a call afterwards. But he's always really good, Nick. The conversation, even if Nick disagrees with what you've said, the conversation will always end with Nick going, "All right, no worries, we'll talk to you later."
Don't come back to our club again.
No, he never says that. He's like he'll be fired up when he starts, but he'll calm down, and in the end, it'll always end well with Nick. So I find he's an amazing individual. So but that doesn't stop you being critical. I mean, it's well documented. I haven't spoken to Robbo in a couple of years, so it doesn't stop me being critical of the Roosters just because I might get a phone call from Nick about it. But it's just par for the course that happens.
Yeah, because I look at other coaches the way they approach the media as well. Ivan is pretty reserved and doesn't do too much.
He doesn't have many relationships in the media.
No, he
not many. He doesn't talk to many journos at all, Ivan. But he's won, right? So he can do that because he's winning all the time.
And Craig's in Melbourne, obviously. Different.
But Craig's, again, amazing guy, Craig. And Craig doesn't carry divots, if you're critical of the Storm, well, he did for a little bit over the grapple stuff. But as a general rule, he's one guy who doesn't play games in the media, always very honest. Like some coaches will...
One I'd like to know, Des Hasler. Jimmy had it. Is he fit?
Let's see about Des.
I asked you.
He's still silver. Des is a unique comment. Last phone call I had with Des.
If you go off what he's press
conference, I've seen him since, but the last phone call I had with him was, or one of the great phone calls I had with him was when things were going pear-shaped at Manly. And I'd written a story, I'd rung a few players about it, and Des rung me, abusing me, don't ring my players. And I said, Des, you're not my boss. You don't tell me what I do. And we had a screaming match on the phone, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I didn't speak to him for ages. And then he got the job at the Gold Coast. And I sent him a text. I said, "Oh, mate, really happy to see you back in the game. The game's better when you're in it. I hope we're all good after the last conversation." And he wrote back and said, "What was our last conversation?" And he just sort of moved on,
Yeah.
But again, he's a different dude, Dave.
I think you got to move on. Sorry, James. You got to move on quick. I mean, you can hold grudges, can't you? Like, seriously, sometimes I fire up and just, you want to front someone, right? But you just got to let it go because you realise people have got a job to do, just like you. You got to move on. Otherwise, if you hold grudges in this game, in the media, you're in trouble. Yeah, it is.
My dad told me that a long time ago. Don't carry grudges.
Yeah. Unless someone has like a scathing, false
doesn't matter.
accusation.
Just let it go. Move on.
Well, I've had one particular incident with one particular journalist that I'll just have never any time for because there's personal accusations towards me that were beyond false.
He can make an enemy though. That bloke.
That's vendetta man.
Correct. Yeah. Just complete
different
personal attack. Just on Hazard, the way he would, I guess, structure things from a media point of view, it would always try to drive a narrative of us against them. And when I saw him on TV, because it's mandated now, it would almost be like it was a character.
Oh,
it was not Des. It was not Des I knew. The coach, obviously, you play to different audiences.
Talks in rooms, doesn't he, and all that.
But it would just be a complete and utter, it was an actor.
His press conferences, they're the worst. But his press conference, every press conference, he tells someone to speak up, and it's obviously a power move, right? So I'm in control here.
So what do you mean? He's trying to get him in a
You'll ask
conversation?
a question and Des will go, can you speak up? Just about every press conference.
Well, he'd almost developed a sort of a speech impediment as well.
And he gets up and he ends his own press conferences. He gets up and walks out half the time.
I think the justification for Des is an incident that involved Brett Stewart that, he could, as a coach, could never let go of. And his understanding of the power of a story, he actually used that story to ignite that Manly team to go and win a premiership, but he was very fearful of the media after that. That's my understanding of his position. And Flana and Tony, I want to ask you guys, with the expanding media landscape, things like podcasts, social media, player access, do you ever put restrictions on the players in terms of, well, coming on a podcast like mine or with radio interviews, and especially in those difficult times, do you have an element of control on the players? We've seen, I think it was Selwyn Cobber that went on a podcast that had said some, a throwaway line about Kevy and Adam Reynolds, which, taken out of context can be delivered a story that is probably not close to the truth.
Look, you don't want to be a control freak to your players. You like to be, we're all in this kind of together, right? And you're experienced enough to know what to do, not what to do, and what to do. So there was a case this year, I don't want to mention the player, that commented on social media, and we did chat, right? Well, the club did. To the individual, said, look, that's just not on. It puts you in a situation, puts us. We haven't had much of it at Manly, but the one time we did, we spoke about it and we all moved on. So it's just, it's not control. It's actually in the media policy. I'm sure most clubs have got it, where they're commenting on things. It's just unnecessary.
So commenting on like people's posts, like
that kind of thing. But we don't have it's rarely happened this year. It only happened once, and we nipped it in the bud. It's as simple as that. So it's not a commonplace at our club at the moment.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think education is crucial there from a club. We've definitely, when I was at the Sharks, we used to do a lot of social media education because it was probably, just emerging how big it is. And, they're a lot more, the young blokes these days are a lot more savvy with it than I am. But, you talk about podcasts. I talk to my players about if you go on this podcast, your language and your behaviour needs to be to Dragon standards, because you can go on a podcast and, not in this room, but in other podcasts, they swear and they talk about it, and we don't tolerate that. You're representing the club.
Yeah, and it gets picked up everywhere.
Yeah, even though you're not in a Dragon shirt, you're still representing the club.
Yeah, 24/7.
Yeah, so you need to be really careful of that and not get like, I could come in and just do a one-on-one with you, James, and you as the host could swear. Yeah. And you suck me into that environment.
Yes.
So I've got to be really careful there as I'm representing my club. Even though I mightn't have, red and white shirt on, I'm still representing the club, and that's tricky.
What about being fearful of having the players say something that could be used, not used against them personally, but giving an opposition motivation?
Yeah, well, you'd like to think that people go on their own podcasts and, on radio shows or talking to journalists are the top half of your list and have got some exposure and experience in that area. The younger ones that are coming in the bottom of the list, we do media training, we expose them to a little bit, we get people, like Reedy just said, he's been to a couple of clubs, get people to come in and ask tricky questions, those young boys, and hopefully they learn in their journey to first grade, and we're not just throwing them out early, the blokes that haven't played first grade, or if they are making their debut, they want to be spoken. The journalists want to speak to them, so we need to open it up for them. But sort of hopefully we could give them a few questions that might be asked here today, and be really clear with your answers and replies. Not giving them the answers and replies because they've got to be individual. Yeah. But it's a tricky one because some people will do it really well. We've got some Indigenous boys, Polynesian boys that we asked to do media. They'll beat their 1.2 time trial. Yeah, they'll be gone. That's how quick they are to get away from media, anything media. And some other boys, the older ones, they know it's part of the journey, and they love doing it, but it's tricky.
Jimmy, this is part of the media landscape now, where you're going to have all these podcasts and social media, people on social media, and people lump that in as the media, right? That's not the media. That's not a trained journalist who, has potentially been to uni or worked in a newspaper for a long time. Right? These guys, a lot of the guys who do those podcasts, they're not, they're. Well, you're an example. You're an ex-player, and with due respect to you, Jimmy, you haven't been trained as a journo, right? So we sort of all get lumped in this big bag, right? And people go, "Oh, it's the media's fault." Well, it's we're not all the same. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know.
I do get what you're saying.
These websites that just pick up stuff, and rip it off the newspapers, put crap headlines on it, right? Everyone goes, well, that's the media. No, it's not. It's not the traditional media. It's not the people who, take their job really seriously and want to be respected. These are people who are just almost,
stealing.
Well, it is a form of...
But just because you go to university
doesn't
mean you
I'm not saying
better.
Not every journo goes to uni either.
You're
I'm just saying
to
somehow
provide information on a story or be part of a podcast or whatever it may be. It's a very new domain. Flan, I want to touch base on something that you said. They used that a word, individual. Now, with social media, I would say that we use words like brand, and it is a lot about self-promotion of the individual. Obviously, I come from a background just about as social media was coming into that, but it was more like, why would you ever want to do that? You as a coach, how do you deal with those people that act like an individual on social media?
Yeah, it's a tricky one because that was sort of the start of my coaching career. Social media was starting to evolve, and especially, I always, and your Woodsy will laugh at it, but when he came to the Sharks and I talked to my Yumbo Kyle and, some others, that we had probably, Paul Gallen, who was like our captain and was working in the media, but started to make money from social media, and I was going like, how do you make money from social media? Woodsy's learnt very, very well off him.
That was from you, Bart.
But it was something that I had.
There's a quid.
Yeah.
Mate, Flano's words of advice from you, just hang out with Gal, you'll make a lot of money.
Learn from him. But I had to learn in that period of time as well, and the individual. Some players use it a lot more than others to benefit, but it's a fine line too that they've still, the reason that people follow them and they're getting some freebies is because they're a good football player, and that needs to be your focus. And when it starts to impact your preparation or your performance, that's when I get involved. And good players, when we're at the Sharks, I used to get off social media before our captain's run and wouldn't get back on it. Some players obviously still did, but we tried to have a bit of a rule about it because it was impacting their sleep, the way they behaved and all that sort of stuff leading into games. And I think it's something that we still as a club at the Dragons are still addressing, and no one's got it right, I don't think.
Well, I think for the biggest thing is when the players do want to use social media, they put themselves out there. Yeah. A lot of the times, a lot of those players, you can tell when they've had a good or bad game, they read the comments. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing I tell these players, especially young kids. If you're happy enough to put all these photos of you training in, whether it's a St George jersey or, Cronulla Sharks, you got to take the good with the bad. There's going to be moments where you're flying and people are going to tell you how good you're going, but they're always going to tell you how much better you're going. But then when you're going bad, there's going to be blokes that are going to come in there and just absolutely flog you. Yeah. And that's the worry that I get with young kids. They just go straight onto their phones, whether it's after training or in a game, and you can just see the mood swing of those players change completely.
Yeah, and that worries me. It worries me a lot because
that's the world we live in at the moment. Everyone's on their phones.
And if you're starting to, as you said, when you're going good, you start reading the comments and, they're positive. That sinks into, I use the analogy of a sponge, that sort of just sinks into the surface. But when the negative ones come, they sink in heavily, and then you start talking about you have all these mental health issues because players read it and it gets overwhelming sometimes.
It boggles my mind when I hear the modern day players say they're going through a form slump, and it's not, I'm going to work hard on my game. I'm going to connect with my teammates. I'm going to start to do more video analysis. No, you know what I'm going to do to fix my form? I'm going to get off social media. Well, why would you go to people why would you listen to people that you would never go for advice for in the first place? There's no identity to this person. This could be like the 13-year-old kid that is new to rugby league that says you've had a shit game and you're kicking stones about it. Like, surely I don't need anybody to tell me if I've played well or played shit. And the person I'd go to is my coach. So, like, how can we manage this with more effectiveness than what currently is being done?
Well, I think with Manly, we're lucky because we've got strong leaders. You've got Jake and Tom and you've got Cheers, right? So we're lucky where they, and Flano and both Woodsy know this, like they kind of lead the example and the behaviour. And I remember going to Vegas and we all sat in a room and said, boys, representing Manly, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want to be about. And Jake Travojevic stand up and said, I reckon we should get off social media while we're there. We're not there for a holiday. So he sets the standard of the club and no one got on social. It was a great trip. And we got the 2 points. But I think your leaders have got to lead the way. They can't be there 24 hours a day when they're getting messages. But I think it's helpful if they're pushing that kind of message, and then individually you've just got to, like Flano says, educate as much as you can. And there is a policy in place. You need to kind of remind them of that as well.
Yeah, I just think it's human nature a little bit that we like to read positive things about us sometimes, and football's no different. I know probably yourself, and I definitely wouldn't have gone to the read comments part of it. I don't need anyone to tell me if I played well or played bad or whatever. I think I'd go to my coach. But it's just the way young fellas are these days. I think, James, that they go and when they do play well, they hear and read a lot of it. There's podcasts, there's radio shows just dedicated to rugby league these days, and it's 24/7. There's some radio stations that go from 5 o'clock in the morning to 9 or 10 o'clock at night and just talk rugby league predominantly.
Well, the Fox have a 24-hour rugby league channel, which obviously you need content, but
the negative side of things different.
I guess listening to shows or opinion pieces by people that have been connected to the game for decades, there's probably value in that. And if you hear a Greg Alexander comment on a team's performance or an individual's performance, or a Michael Innes or an Aaron Woods or whoever it may be, Gordon Tallis, you go, well, maybe there's some merit in what they say, and I actually listen to what they say. Maybe they've got a point. But for a faceless individual on social media that you have no background check on, they're basically. They can say they have credibility. I've been a fan of the game since this time, and I'm going to tell you this is what I think about you and your club and your performance. Well, there's nothing to back that up, and it's just.
But even with the likes of like ourselves or Gordy and that, I wouldn't care what they say, because the only people that you want to get not criticism, but if you want to get the feedback is my coach and my peers, because they know what our game plan is each week. It could change. So 1 week they might say, oh, he's not carrying the ball up like he should be, or he's not doing enough with when they've got the possession hands. But our game plan is go after a side defensively, and then you could be getting your back five to work hard, and they could be making all the meters. It's whoever's inside those four walls that matters. And that's the problem with these young blokes. When they get on these social media, like I've seen it firsthand, a couple of guys drop a ball, or, they drop a couple of balls, or, they react on Twitter afterwards and go, oh, that wasn't us today, we'll fight back next week, have a good week of training. Like, you don't even need to do that. Like, who cares? Like that yeah, you want to keep the fans happy and on your side, but we know as a group what you're trying to do. And if you are worrying about feedback from people outside you in the circle, then that's the big problem there.
I agree with what he's saying, and how things have changed. That as soon as the players walk off the field, and I see it, at other clubs, that they go straight to their locker, and the first thing they grab is their phone. And it's not to see if mum and dad text me or, to see if anything's happened out there. They're going straight to, see what's happening, see what people are saying, the social media side of things, which is just all their statistics. And, that'll back up whether they played a good game. The maturity level of individuals within your group, Messi spoke about his maturity at his club. You didn't need anyone to tell you after a game if you played well. You didn't need anyone. You don't need. I know you say all you'd want to do is, go to the coach, but you knew when I was starting. You knew.
I'd stay away from you.
So,
I wouldn't go near you.
It was pretty. That's the maturity that you need in your side, and that's what I love about. You got to have young kids and young boys in your team, but the more the mature top end bit, it'll stop a little bit this social media. Go back to all the time.
Is when we talk about culture and connection being such an important part of any sporting organisation or any business for that matter, in order to drive connection with one another, maybe would it be best to have some restrictions on players and their access to their phones post game, because you'd want to celebrate the wins together. Like you don't need congratulations from at somebody blah blah blah, and you certainly don't need commiserations. You go through those tough times. It needs to be together, and probably an extension of this is around people coming into the dressing rooms after the game. Yeah. But you win together, you lose together. Like we're in this together.
Yep.
Maybe it's time to an environment where phones are off until midnight or until an hour post game. We can actually deal with this together.
We have it during the week. That players get to training and they won't touch their phones to lunchtime. Myself, I love going to work and putting my phone down and not even looking at it. I'll get later in the afternoon, there'll be missed messages from Reedy and all them type of blokes wanting something, but but I'm comfortable. I feel so much better that I can just put it there and it's a bit of education to our player group that, hey, listen, you don't need to touch it. They go to lunchtime and, there's nothing. I've got nothing. So the more they do that, they get into habits. We're all, very, very football players get into good habits and bad habits. And to answer your question about post-game and so on, I think that's a club thing. And you need to sort of drive that culture. Connection is so important these days in a playing group because they're so professional. Sometimes they come and train, eat, go home, and there's no connection part of it. And I know at Manly there was a lot of connection bit. They'd go out and have coffee. Definitely at the Dragons we're doing that. And the Dragons have got the geographical challenge as well. People living in Sydney, out in the west and down in Wollongong. So connection is really important as well. So we don't want to connect and everyone will be on their phones.
Yeah.
Jimmy, I reckon I was in the Storm Sheds on Sunday night. I was in the Storm Sheds after the game on Sunday night, and I didn't see anyone on their phone in the Storm Sheds after that game. They were having a beer together with their families. I honestly can't remember anyone being on their phone.
I reckon it would be a bit of a unwritten rule.
Yeah. Do you reckon it's because they lost as well?
Well, probably. But that's probably a smart thing to do, right?
Yeah, 100%. But the Penrith Sheds, they were on their phone non-stop.
Yeah.
I just reckon the leaders, they set the stand in clubs like the Storm, and that's why they're there, and that's what I'm trying to say with our group. Look, I think if it was a player initiative led by the leaders and said, look, you know what, we're going to get off social media, you'd rather be driven at that level like me saying, right, you got to get off it, or Siebes or what have you. They've definitely got to come from within, I reckon. But it doesn't seem to be as much as a problem as an overall problem. It's just those young boys can't help themselves, right?
It is funny that the psyche of the player, and even I fell into it as well, when one of the things that would draw me in is a journalist's rating out of 10 of you. And as bizarre as
you love player ratings? Fans. The player ratings go gangbusters online. People love reading what our opinion is.
An out of 10 rating.
Yeah.
It's
you used to check them out.
Of course.
Did you?
Yeah. Guilty pleasure.
Why do you think you can talk to you his whole career?
Guilty pleasure, what? 7?
Did you get filthy?
Really?
Did you get filthy?
There's probably a few times, where I felt underrated and so, I'll take that.
Were you around when Rugby League Week was still around?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you got the ratings. Everyone looked at that flat out, the ratings. You always had them peak.
Yeah, you definitely did. I look at these days ratings as well, and Brent Reed, he's got no idea.
I stick clear of player ratings. There's been too much trouble player ratings. Like, don't put your hand up to do them, I reckon, because players remember.
Yeah.
You're right.
Players
notice when they know.
I had a look at the GF ones. I agree, it was pretty close.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, they were pretty good.
There you go. Who did them? Do you remember?
Probably you,
Ricky or something. No, not you,
obviously.
Buzz or Ricky.
Wow.
Interesting what you said about the grand final, the Storm players, no phones. I think that is a club initiative. Like, we're going to leave it. And then Penrith obviously celebrating, taking the photographs. They want to keep those memories forever. But yeah, I wonder, I reckon they would have had a period of like, it's just us. Like, we're going to just have this moment together. Let's put that down. We'll finish up the media episode with either something to keep, something to go, or maybe a new initiative, like, because maybe we've just scratched the surface with everything the media can bring. Tony, I'll start with you.
I think it's important as a club to have a good relationship with the media. As I said, balanced reporting is always the way, Reedy. But I think, you got to try and work together. Sometimes it doesn't work that way, but as much as you can, it's in the club's best interest to have a good relationship with the media than not. So we'd like to keep that going.
Flano, the coach?
I think the media relationship will definitely, the clubs that I've been at, Manly and the Sharks, and definitely now at the Dragons, is the media access is nearly 24/7. And, you have your own media department as well, filming all content while you're at training, while you're at work. There's content going on, or trying to build content. So I just think it's, where it's come from is, we've come from, maybe a paper. Now we've got social media, we've got video content, podcasts, and so on. That, if we want our game to be the biggest game in Australia, or, I think we just got to deal with it, and I think we are. Build relationships and build our code.
Relationships is a big one. But for me, I like that one after the game. What Melbourne did, just stay off your phones. You've like Flano said, you've got probably a contact person for the club. They can take the photos, whatnot. They can send it to you later that night. But just enjoy it. Maybe, half an hour after the game. You've prepped all week. You've had a big 80 minutes of footy, and only those 17 guys and the coach are the ones that had influence on the game. So just sit around and talk about the game, and then get to your phone after when you go home.
Jimmy, I'd encourage the players out there, embrace the media. We're not the enemy. People seem to think we're the enemy. We're not the enemy. We're there to help you and tell your stories, and we can be an ally for you. If you're under pressure, or you've got drama in your life, or drama with your footy, the media can help you in that respect. So I'd just say to players, don't be afraid. Say g'day, say hello, because it will make a world of difference, I'm telling you.
Well, also, it is the number one contributor financially to the salary cap. And the only reason it increases is because of the money that the media organisations put in. So
I think I said hello.
But the one bloke, it is the one bloke that had a feud with the nicest bloke in rugby league, Jake Travojevic. That's why I don't.
That was a misunderstanding.
Where did
the feud? Where did the feud with Jake?
I went on the Kangaroo tour with him 2 years ago.
Was it?
Oh no, it was that's right. That Paige Spiranak came out, the golfer. Remember Paige Spiranak, the golfer?
Yeah.
Remember she came out she was doing something at Fort Pines at the ground, and there was something going on at the time. I can't remember what it was. So I wanted to speak to Jakey. I said, Jake, can I have a chat? He went, no. I said, Jakey, come on, mate. Because I've known Jakey a long time. I said, mate, 5 minutes, come on. No, I'm not talking, no. I said, are you serious? And he went, I'm not talking to you. And walked off. And James Hooper heard about it, put it on Fox Sports on their website, the brouhaha between the nicest bloke in rugby league. And then we went on the Kangaroo tour, and Desi was under the pump, and Jakey didn't want to talk, right? And we were at him every day. Come on, Jakey, let's have a chat.
And then Brent. No, but didn't you try to say you'd smash one of the rugby league players while you were over there too?
No, that was rubbish. Chandler started that. Josh Adokar.
Who's linked
Trevor
with...
Gilmore's actually on that trip. Can I tell you a little story about the act?
Sure, yeah.
He had a few drinks one night. We were at a pub, and he cleared the floor and basically said, run at me. You want to smash me, the axe.
He's not the only
and
one.
I was about to do it. I took my glasses off. He said, pick up that bin. There was a silver bin there. And I had a few drinks too. And someone went, mate, you don't want to do that.
No.
No, okay, no worries. But then Josh had a car. We were having a discussion, who would you want to tackle in rugby league? And Chamis said, I think it was Chamis said, you go after a winger. And I went, yeah, probably a winger at our car. And someone told him about it. So for the next week, he said, mate, every time I went to train, he said, you're running at me today. And the final session, I took my contact lenses because I thought, it can't be that hard, can it? Can't have it too much. And someone said, no, you don't want to do that.
Well, you were going to run it.
Yeah, I would love to have seen that.
Yeah. Can you tackle already or?
No, I can't do that. It's quick, get your shoulder in, don't you, Bessie?
I reckon they should get that as halftime entertainment at the grand final. Yes. Would have been cool.
Forget the race.
Yeah.
I tell you what, they are the best things for player relationships going on a tour with the Kangaroo Tour. They do amazing things. There's guys that went on with 20 years ago, Jason Rolls, Craig Fitzgibbon. They still talk to them today, and they're, because of that, the relationships you built from 20 years ago.
All right. Great chat, lads. All things media covered here. Thanks, everybody, for your wonderful feedback, questions and comments from the Rugby League Roundtable. I'm going to be addressing some from the Rep Football edition. So we'll start, and just a quick thank you to our friends at Ladbrokes that help make this podcast possible. We really do appreciate and value our partners in Ladbrokes. So our first comment question is from RD Cochrane. Taking all the speculation out, big takeaway for me is Flanagan's idea that the clubs should all be working collectively, in brackets, pipe dreams, perhaps, on increasing the development pool on behalf of the general expansion strategy. Wonder if all clubs would get on board. I think this is a magnificent point that Coach Flanagan made. It's something that I think the whole of game should be applying themselves, looking to work together to expand the talent pool. That is something that I think it actually needs to happen, because we are going to be stretching ourselves when 2-3 extra teams come into the competition. I think it would be foolish not to look at getting the best and brightest minds that have been spread across the game, that probably have that narrow focus and that individualized or local focus of their own backyard, which is only natural. I'm not saying anything negative about the development clubs or the clubs that have developed players over the years. The one that springs to mind in recent years is Penrith. Nothing against what they've done, but let's pick the brains of the best and brightest when it comes to talent identification, when it comes to development of potential, seeking potential, what has worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, how to get the best out of all those individuals. There's so much untapped potential, in my opinion. Players that are at certain clubs that don't get to that point, and then we see them move to other clubs and they reach their potential. Well, why do we delay that process? Let's get the best and brightest, let's share ideas and have the NRL as an even better, more competitive competition. And I think we only get that with the best and brightest all pulling in the same direction for the greater good of the game. Next question or comment is from Glenn 9009. Okay, if we're going to go to 20 teams, we need to shorten the season. April, June, we play 11 or 12 regular season rounds. Then we have a July as Rep month, where you play Origin over the month and have Pacific countries play. You spread out the games in July to cover the month, with Origin opening and closing the month. Then you continue the rest of the season until finals. You don't need more than 20 rounds to determine who should be in the finals. Then your big international games can be played at the end of the year like normal. Well, Glenn, look, really appreciate what you're saying. My sticking point on having less games is the fact that the people that pay the money and put money into the game expect a certain number of games to be played. So each game has a value of X. The more games played, the greater the pie, the greater the amount of sponsorship dollars, of TV revenue dollars that go into the game. The game has become a business. Like all sports throughout the globe, they have become businesses. And I think if we're looking to expand, we'd want to capitalize on that in terms of playing more fixtures. Yes, if we have a market in Perth. Yes, if we have a market in Papua New Guinea, in another area of Queensland, in Adelaide, in New Zealand, wherever it may be, in the Pacific Islands. Yes, we're going to grow the audience, but I just think more of the product is going to be a requirement of this. If you look back to the last or the previous CBA, one of the sticking points was the NRL wanted to have the ability to increase the number of fixtures by, I believe, 2 each year without consultation to the RLPA and affecting the CBA. That was a real sticking point. So it's in the thoughts of the NRL that they want to expand the number of games, and I am personally all for it. I know it's a brutal competition. I know it's an incredibly grueling, demanding game that our athletes play. And they should be financially compensated for that. The way to grow that and be compensated is by playing more games. And look, there are consequences for that in terms of what the ramifications are for the rep period, the life cycle of the player, the longevity of the player. But I guarantee you, if the season was shortened and a wealthy investor put on a tournament like the IPL, that the cricketers have, and threw a heap of money at it, you would soon see those players go and play in this other competition in order to boost their earning capacity, which is a sad reality, but it's a short lifespan for the athlete. They want to earn as much as they can, and money talks. And if we're looking at growing the game, if we're looking at expanding, I can only see more games being played in not necessarily more rounds, but I don't think it would be smart to reduce the number of rounds. I think that reduces the revenue capacity for the game, for the athlete, for the clubs. I just don't see that happening. I think we will see 27 rounds continue in some way, shape or form. How that looks is probably going to be dependent on where and when those teams come into the competition. Next one from Flamin' Jammin'. Great name, by the way. From the outside, Super League looks like a sinking ship. However, for Volandis and Abdo, who know financials, Super League could be an asset with significant unrealised potential. With the right management and investment strategy, they could acquire at a bargain price and unlock its true value. Flamin' Jammin', I agree with you. Look, the Super League, it does need help. I look at crowd numbers, participation numbers, general standard of play. It certainly needs people that know rugby league, know how to grow the game. They've recently got IMG involved, which have gone to the licensing model, which I think is a step in the right direction. But I think with the help of the NRL, people that know and love our game in the best competition in the world, I just don't see how this couldn't help the Super League to grow, to get a far greater share of the sporting stage in the United Kingdom, into new markets potentially. You know, if the Australian teams go over, some sort of World Club Challenge. Again, I previously spoke about more games coming in, ways to tap into financial resources. That is something that we could look at, where those games are played, perhaps in Abu Dhabi, wherever it may be. We've seen us go to Vegas. Who knows? But I think if the NRL were to go and buy Super League at the right price, the people involved could have a remarkably beneficial impact on the competition, because it's much needed over there. That's it for our fans' questions. Thank you so much for everybody that contributed. And again, big thanks to Ladbrokes for partnering with us and bringing you this section of the show. Thanks again, fans and listeners.